I've always loved camping. Not the kind with big campsites, RVs, and dozens of families. I mean real camping. Just a tent, a backpack, and miles of forest. A few months ago, I decided to spend a long weekend in a place called Blackwood Forest. It's not a famous national park. In fact, most people have never heard of it. It's a huge stretch of forest several hours from the nearest town. No cell service, no cabins, no tourists. Exactly what I was looking for. When I stopped at a small gas station to buy water, an old man noticed my backpack. "Heading into Blackwood?" he asked. I smiled. "Yeah, just for 3 nights." He looked at me for a few seconds before speaking again. "If you hear whistling after dark—" He paused. "Don't whistle back." I laughed. He didn't. I figured it was one of those local ghost stories people tell visitors. I thanked him, got back into my truck, and drove toward the forest. Around noon, I reached the trailhead. The forest was beautiful. Tall pine trees. Fresh air. Not another person in sight. After hiking for nearly 3 hours, I found a small clearing beside an old creek. It was perfect. I pitched my tent, gathered firewood, cooked dinner, and watched the sun disappear behind the trees. By 10 o'clock, the forest had become completely silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. It felt strange, almost too quiet. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up. At first I didn't know why. Then I heard it. A whistle. One long note, then two short ones. It wasn't loud. It sounded far away, somewhere deep between the trees. I checked my watch. 2:43 a.m. I stayed completely still. A minute passed. Then I heard it again. Exactly the same pattern. One long whistle. Too short. I unzipped the tent just enough to look outside. Nothing. Only darkness. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the trees. Empty. No movement. No animals. No people. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just a bird. I zipped the tent shut and somehow fell back asleep. The next morning, everything felt normal again. Sunlight filled the forest. Birds were singing. I even laughed at myself for being nervous. While making breakfast, I noticed something unusual. There were footprints around my campsite. Bare footprints. Human. I froze. The ground was still soft from the rain a few days earlier. The prints circled my tent. Once, twice, maybe 3 times. At first I thought someone had walked through the area during the night. But then I realized something. The footprints didn't lead to my campsite. They started beside my tent, circled it, and disappeared back into the forest. There were no tracks leading in, only tracks leading away. I stared at them for several minutes. That made absolutely no sense. I considered packing up and leaving. Instead, I convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the rain had washed away part of the trail. Maybe I just wasn't seeing it correctly. So I stayed. I wish I hadn't. That evening I decided to leave my GoPro recording outside the tent, just in case. Not because I believed in ghosts. I simply wanted proof that someone had been walking around my campsite. As the sun disappeared, the forest became silent again, exactly like the night before. No insects, no birds, nothing. At 2:43 a.m., I heard the whistle again. This time, it sounded much closer. And then, for the first time, I heard something else. A voice. Soft. Almost impossible to hear. It sounded like someone whispering my name. "Daniel." I stopped breathing. Because I knew. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. The second night changed everything. Because whatever was out there wasn't trying to scare me anymore. It was trying to get me to leave the tent. Part 2. I didn't answer the voice. I couldn't. My body completely froze inside the sleeping bag. "Daniel." It came again, soft, calm, almost friendly, but something about it felt wrong. The way it said my name sounded like someone who had only heard it once and was trying to imitate a human voice. I reached for my flashlight without making a sound. The whisper stopped. The forest became silent again. I stayed awake until sunrise. The moment daylight appeared, I stepped outside the tent. Nothing. No footprints. No broken branches. Nothing that suggested anyone had been there. Then I remembered the GoPro. My hands were shaking as I removed the memory card. I opened the footage on my phone. The first few hours were completely normal. The camera showed my campsite. The fire slowly died. The trees barely moved. At exactly 2:43 a.m., something changed. The sound disappeared. Not just the birds. Everything. The microphone recorded absolute silence. No wind. No insects. Nothing. Then, a shadow crossed between two trees, too fast to identify. A few seconds later, another one, this time closer. I paused the video, zoomed in. There was definitely something there. Tall, extremely thin, standing behind a tree. Only half of its body was visible. I watched frame by frame. It never moved. Not once, but every few seconds. It appeared behind a different tree, always closer than before, without ever being seen walking. Then the camera suddenly glitched. The screen filled with static for 3 seconds. When the image returned, the creature was gone. I let out a nervous laugh. There has to be an explanation. Maybe someone had been messing with me. Maybe the camera was damaged. I packed my backpack. For the first time, I seriously thought about leaving. But curiosity won. I wanted answers. Around noon, I continued hiking deeper into the forest. About an hour later, I found something unexpected. An abandoned ranger station. Most of the windows were broken. The roof had partially collapsed. It looked like nobody had been there for years. Inside, everything was covered in dust. Old chairs, rotting maps, rusted filing cabinets. Then I noticed a notebook lying on the floor. Most of the pages had been ruined by water. Only a few could still be read. One page caught my attention. Written in faded black ink were the words, "It doesn't hunt you. It learns you." My heart started beating faster. Below it, someone had written, "Never answer the voice." Then another sentence, one that made me close the notebook immediately. "If it knows your name, you're already too late." I stuffed the notebook into my backpack and hurried back toward my campsite. The walk back felt different. Every few minutes, I had the strange feeling that someone was walking behind me. Whenever I turned around, the forest was empty, until one moment, far between the trees, I saw someone standing completely still, too far away to recognize. I blinked. They were gone. That night, I didn't light a campfire. I locked myself inside the tent before sunset. At exactly 2:43 a.m., the whistle returned. This time, it came from directly outside the tent. And then, something gently ran its fingers across the fabric, slowly, from one side to the other. I held my breath. Then I heard my own voice, perfectly clear, from outside, saying one sentence. "Daniel, open the tent." I didn't move. Hearing my own voice outside the tent was enough to terrify me. "Daniel, open the tent." It sounded exactly like me. Same voice, same tone. But I knew I wasn't speaking. I held my breath and stayed completely silent. A few seconds later, something slowly brushed its fingers across the side of my tent. Then, heavy footsteps began circling around me. One lap, then another. Each step was slow and deliberate. Finally, everything stopped. right behind my head. I could hear breathing through the thin fabric. I stayed awake until sunrise. The moment the sun came up, I packed everything and left without eating breakfast. I just wanted to get out of that forest. As I walked toward my truck, I noticed fresh footprints in the mud. Bare human footprints. They weren't on the trail. They were walking beside me, hidden between the trees. Every time I stopped, the footprints stopped. Every time I walked, they continued. But I never saw anyone. After almost an hour, I finally reached my truck. I threw my backpack inside and drove away as fast as I could. Before leaving the forest, I looked in my rearview mirror. Far behind me, something was standing between the trees, completely still, watching me leave. A week later, I watched the final recording from my GoPro. At exactly 3:01 a.m., a tall figure slowly stepped into view. It was much taller than any person. Its arms almost touched the ground. Its face had no eyes, no mouth, nothing. It stood in front of my tent for several minutes without moving. Then, very slowly, it turned its head toward the camera, as if it knew someone would watch the footage later. The video ended. I never returned to Blackwood Forest, but sometimes, late at night, I still wake up to a soft whistle outside my window. One long note, two short ones, and every single time, it sounds a little closer than before. Ending. If you ever hear someone calling your name in the middle of the woods, don't answer. Some things are only waiting for you to reply.